Hello, and welcome back to the most real, the most hard-hitting, the most fearless podcast in the whole of the rap family, the Welsh Women's Rugby Appreciation Podcast. Contrary to what I was told at length in the group chat, I am in fact joined by a full crew. We have Dr. Sian, Dr. Harley, Dr. Julia. Welcome all.
Hello.
Welcome.
We shall
Glad
attempt
I
to
could
get
make
through
it.
the next hour without being cancelled.
I
Behave
was,
yourself.
I was, I was gonna say I do think that this might be the episode where I get canceled.
Look, the rule is if someone says something cancelable, we're all going down and just go for it, okay? So everyone's getting cancelled. You're getting cancelled. I'm getting cancelled. Everyone's getting
We
cancelled.
got, we got to get a more serious editor.
Yeah, absolutely. My God. Right. There's so much rugby to talk through, and we have a reasonably limited time frame, so we're just going to jump straight in. Biggest, well, we're going to talk about everything, like I said. We're going to talk mainly about the Welsh women because we're a Welsh women's podcast. So, but we're going to do that last. We're going to spend some time talking about some fun stuff first. And the first fun thing we're going to talk about is Ireland beat the Black Ferns in Canada in WXV1. I don't know about anybody else, but for reasons that we'll come on to towards the end of the podcast, I checked my phone in the morning to see what happened in this. I did not stay up and watch it. And I was like, oh my God, I may have exclaimed aloud. So, who has actually managed to catch up and watch this so far? Sian, you watched it, right?
Mhm.
Okay, Sian.
I didn't watch it live. But I did do the catch up because I did exactly the same.
Yeah, Sean and I watched it on catch up the morning after. I
Okay.
also couldn't stay up because I thought that it was a done deal, and that was on me.
Same,
So,
same. I
so
felt
Sian, tell me what
very.
happened when you watched it back.
I mean, I was taken away a little bit because New Zealand started really well. I should caveat that I watched it with knowing that New Zealand were going to lose, and it kind of like I don't like watching rugby that way. I don't like knowing when you know, unless it's Wales, and I love it. But watching the game, it kind of took that edge away because I think I was watching the game and I was thinking, yeah, New Zealand are, probably going to win this. But at the same time, I thought that New Zealand, they were playing well. They were playing well, but Ireland were tackling and defending so ferociously. As the game starts to tick on, you're kind of thinking there, yeah, they're holding on to this, they're holding on to this, and they're holding on. And I do think that overall, New Zealand were a little tiny, 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 tiny bit unlucky. They crossed the line 3 times. They had three, tries disallowed. They weren't tries, but there is luck. And on a day that they probably would have scored 3 tries. I don't want to say that Ireland winning was luck, though. I don't think that Ireland didn't deserve to win. I thought that Ireland definitely deserved to win. New Zealand had a lot of possession, but they just didn't seem like they had the same accuracy in a lot of their play. So they had all that possession, but they weren't converting it. Ireland go into the 22 and score.
Yeah.
You
So
know, it was
I've not seen it, but I've seen the stats, and that stats definitely line up with what you're saying in terms of
yeah,
it feels like New Zealand got unlucky. I mean, if you look at things like attacking stats, like New Zealand pretty much double of Ireland and everything, maybe not in ball carries, but if you look at the meters per carry, so much more.
yeah,
14 line breaks to 2. That's actually been
Double post
revised since
contact
I saw it.
meters.
Yeah. Like you said, 3 tries disallowed. I think Ireland had, in terms of 22 entries, not very many. They had 8 22 entries, scored how many tries? 5 or 6?
5. I think they scored 5. I think was it
Hmm?
5?
We're
Yes,
saying
Yeah,
because
I
five.
mean their success,
didn't
their
they
like success
both get
strike
an
rate was
AP?
incredible. I thought
Yeah,
like they just
unbelievable.
literally just took pretty much every chance that they had.
But I
You
mean,
know,
but there's some really interesting stats if you scroll back up there, Huw, especially with, and I bring this up only because it's something we've talked about before, and it's something we've wondered aloud and wondered what's going to go on moving forward. But look at the kicks. I am very surprised with the way that Ireland kicked. There was a lot of. I'm just going off of what Sean was saying. I understand the draw to say that like it was a lot of luck on one side and not luck on the other, but also there was a lot of, in my opinion, daring things that Ireland did, and maybe it was because they thought they
yeah,
had nothing to lose. But it feels like,
yeah.
and when you look at these stats, it looks like a team that played where they were just like, "Fuck it, let's try." And
No, I
but
agree. I
but
agree.
they
I think
did.
I
They
think
threw a
Ireland
lot
got
at it.
they did, and I think they just got their tactics right on the day. You do wonder whether New Zealand turned up and they were a bit complacent. They kind of probably thought that they were gonna. How much did they think that Ireland were really gonna trouble them? I saw a lot of stuff online and people saying, "Oh, New Zealand didn't pick a strong side," and all this kind of stuff, and that's not true. That is not true at all.
I was just
New Zealand
say
picked their best side.
that really was a running commentary immediately after, and at least for the day after, that it wasn't a full strength side. And first of all, that doesn't seem true if you just look at the lineup. But even if it was a few injuries, if a few injuries can knock you off your trajectory so badly, it indicates a lack of strength on the team. It indicates perhaps a lack of planning, perhaps lack of coaching.
We're talking about.
I know,
right. and exactly. And you brought it up, Sean, but we happen to be a podcast that talks about another team that, to their bad detriment, underestimated Ireland once and learned a very hard lesson. And I think that's what happened. We know exactly what a team that doesn't prepare for the tricks that Ireland can pull out looks like, and that's what it looked like. And I think stats,
100%. And the tactics were quite simple in a sense, but just really effective. Like Wafer's try from the scrum, that's so effective. That is just so simple as well. It's just a simple decoy. Stuff like that is.
It was simple. I'll see if I can find
coming from fans of a team that, and we'll talk about it later because it's definitely something we're going to have to talk about specifically with Australia. But being fans of a team that perhaps can't modulate, can't pull out varied, I guess it's not a nice way to say, but a team that can't surprise other teams. We don't have any trick plays. We don't have any surprise, we can pull an amazing pick. They can. And when they weren't sure if they could, they tried it anyway, and it worked more often than it didn't, which I feel like is a big lesson playing for anybody playing New Zealand in the near future.
It was such a good game of rugby, though. Such a good game. I wish I could have watched it from live.
We'll talk about the reasons why that wasn't possible a bit later. But if I just
what's your position on that? Can I just quickly hop in? Admittedly, I've only seen the highlights, so it's basically all the tries and the build-ups. But that's just such good strength in picking up that
what a player,
wonderful classic number 8 play. But I just want to pick up one moment. I just want to appreciate a back doing some decent defence, although it ultimately ended up in another Ireland try. But the replacement scrum half for New Zealand, when basically Ireland worked out, New Zealand are going to keep pinching our ball, so they were playing lots of nice fancy trick plays and basically thrown to my previous team we called it a Pedro, where you throw it to the front lifter, run, and just the. Wait, hold it. I know we're just having this trial loop. So what I'm saying is irrelevant if you're watching.
Different try. She scored 2.
Oh, you just do both tries.
I could watch Wafer's trial, but this trial day is just so good.
Let's talk about Aoife Wafer before, because our friend Hattie, shout out Hattie, dropped a stat 9 caps, and it already feels like she's the best player in the world. What?
Yeah.
Well, again, shout out Hattie pointed out, you said she had played 9, and she was player of the match for 3. 33% player of the match rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane stats.
I was searching my mind for somebody to compare her to, and I'm actually kind of at a loss. I hate to say it, but you might just because we don't have the breadth of data, we might have to compare her to a male player, but I don't know anybody whose rate is like that, and she's so young.
Adi Severe, I suppose, in terms of a number 8, is the closest, but
that was the one that I saw.
We're not here to talk about men's players. Like you said, New Zealand will be extremely disappointed, but they're not crap. I mean,
no way.
I think New Zealand's wingers are the best.
They're still World Cup holders.
I mean, I don't think they played terribly. It's not they're not a bad side or anything. They just, I don't know, they just lacked that because they had so much possession.
It was super tight too.
It was.
They certainly didn't play. They certainly didn't play badly. Is where I was going with that. I really don't feel especially because we have a very contrasting match, which we'll talk about in a bit. But in contrast to the Canada-France match, where you saw a team that is capable of greatness not perform greatness, I don't think that's what happened here. I think it would be an insult to New Zealand to say, like, you didn't show up.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
to be
exactly,
fair,
that's
if you
what I mean.
look, they lost by 2 points and they missed 3 conversions.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
Could've been
but to be fair,
But
Ireland
you know,
missed a few.
them's the rules. You know,
Yeah.
there's no we're sorry points. You missed them, so you lost. So,
But, I mean, at this level, it's always about those tiny little. It's all about the tiny little things, isn't it? You know, at this level,
but it speaks to
so
like,
tight.
the thing that I thought this can't be right, and I looked up and checked it, and it was right. New Zealand are the World Cup holders. Ireland didn't qualify for the last World Cup. Like what
Yeah.
Ireland have
And
done
that's because of the qualification design.
what Ireland have done in 2 years is unbelievable, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. When you think
We don't.
No, go on.
Oh, well, we don't have to dive too much into it because that could be its own episode by itself, but especially considering what we know about the immense hardships that Ireland women have seen in the last few years. And it isn't just the standard funding and nobody takes women seriously. There were much more insidious problems. We don't know if they've gotten over them. One of the horrible problems is just gone. I guess they shipped them off to Scotland. Great. It's probably helping having fewer bad vibes, but I think there is something to study there with the progression. I'm interested to see how they go for the rest of them. I'm even more excited to see them play the US now, which we'll talk about that game as well. But
when you think when they played at Wales at Cap a couple of years ago in the Six Nations, and I can't remember the scores now, but I was there. We steamrolled
It was
them.
Nilling, I think.
they did.
We
remember rightly.
They
was
looked
hard.
awful. Like, you know, and it
Yeah.
when us going over there last April and the way that they played against us, you know, I gotta say, I you know, to go from they've gone to WXV 3 and then they jumped up to 1, and a lot of people would have thought that they probably would have lost their games, and they've already beat New Zealand. That's incredible.
They did what Wales couldn't do. They did what Wales
Exactly.
couldn't do, going from 3 to 1.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's move on to another game now. So, Julia, one of the things that you said to me once, which has resonated with me ever since, is North Americans have silly names. And pursuing on that train of thought, let's talk about Canada.
Let's.
Fancy Bermuda.
Yes.
Bermudez. Fancy Bermudez.
Best name ever.
Fancy Bermuda's rules.
2 tries.
She was just destined to be like a famous sports athlete, I reckon.
Yeah, you can't be a, no disrespect to any professions, a window cleaner called Fancy Bermudez, can you?
Exactly. You've got to have fancy feet. Fancy feet, fancy hands.
I will say that I did want to do a stats strip about it, but then I looked at her tries and it was kind of just like classic winger, get the ball in space and touch it over the line type thing. So they all count, but that's what it is. But this was a beatdown. Like we all picked Canada versus France as the game of the first round of like, ooh, genuinely don't know who's the better team. And
we were wrong.
Canada, it like I said, it was a beatdown. Like
beat the brakes off them.
Nearly twice as many 22-meter entries. Conversion's about the same, ignore that. Twice as many
line breaks.
More than double the carries.
That's insane.
So France's tries that they scored were kind of like very French, kind of like, well, hey, from our own 22 type scores.
Oh, they were chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But who watched this game? I haven't quite seen it. Sean, have you seen it?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Definitely. I watched
it on replay again. Yeah. Oh, did you?
Look, Canada, 70% rucks under 3 seconds.
I was going to say, I'm really glad you touched on that. That is my number one thing that I wanted to talk about was how hard they run. I don't even know how else to say it. I guess the ruck speed is really the best way of saying it. But
yeah,
the strength and the intensity with which they hit every confrontation, 100%. Every line, like they expected to break. And we see by the numbers they did.
Yeah. That was the thing that really stood out to me was the ruck speed. It was just nuts. I don't know whether it makes it worse when you're used to watching Wales.
It truly felt as fast as a sevens game. Sorry, yeah.
Go on,
look at the ruck numbers. There were only 44 attacking rucks for France.
That's not many.
That's triple. That's triple the rucks won. That's outstanding.
Yeah, but to only have 44 rucks because they still had
a
fair few carries, like that is bizarre. I did want to point out one of my highlights of this game is from the losing team, and it was Pauline Bourdon-Sanzous's solo effort.
Oh yes,
because it was one of the most French rugby things I've ever seen.
Yes,
it was so artistic.
Yes, it's this try. Yep. Yeah, it was a great try.
It's a brilliant one.
It's such a French try.
Put the YouTube on.
Such a French try.
It's very
yeah.
It's
yes.
so beautiful. Her vision and her brain are something that she's awesome. An excellent 9. She's one of those players where, like, if she played somewhere else, I feel like my first instinct would be like, you need to put her
is this a bullshit try? This looks like it's going to be.
Marine Menage.
Yes, this is the other
one. Was a bit mad.
I know which one this is now. This is the one where they just take the throw away quick and no one's back.
Yep.
I think
it was foolish.
Canada went to sleep a little bit there, and it was probably the kind of worst mistake that they made the whole game.
I was going to say
France scored some decent tries, to be fair to them.
Well, that is
really France. I thought that actually the quality of some of the handling was unbelievable.
Yeah, I thought the same.
And you can tell by the way that they played that Canada understood that speed in various forms was going to be their friend. Yes, they are physically strong. I would say physical wise, they were pretty well matched, and you could see when you saw them scrum. That wasn't the problem. And I think that they went into it knowing that they weren't always going to be able to out rugby them. So sometimes they would just have to out sports them. And we did see that, especially in those harder, like 5-6 meter out tries. And we did see a few of them. And Canada doesn't mind bashing their head into a wall over and over. It's not great for you. It's not pretty rugby, but it works. And I say that because we're going to look at Wales, and we're going to see a contrast of a team that wants to do that, but can't do it that well. Needs to find.
I think Canada just got so much confidence. They just look so confident, and they look just, I don't know, they've just got a spark about them. And they just got the impression that they were like, yeah, France, you can score like 10 tries against us. We'll score 15. Do you know what I mean?
Then we'll score 15.
Can Canada challenge England?
I mean, I think they've gone to number 2 in the world now. And I think they really deserve, I think they are the second best team in the world. Exactly.
My answer
I think they can challenge them, but I'd still expect England to win. But I think they can challenge them.
My answer is unequivocally yes. And I say this because I know that there will be a lot of folks who are newer to women's rugby. This has happened already, actually. At the World Cup in 2014, the finalists were Canada and England, actually. And Canada almost beat England, and that was 10 years ago. I think there is absolutely no question that they can challenge them. I think that if, for example, Sophie de Goede comes back, if Magali Harvey comes back, which is a big if, she's been playing a lot of club in Elite One. I don't see why she wouldn't come back. She's not nearing retirement age. If we see a few more people come back, and also the people they have now, which we could spend more time talking about as well. Yeah. Excellent. There is absolutely no reason why not to. It's really just a rugby hegemony thing. And it's unwise to take the men's framework and impose it upon the women, because you're going to get your guesses wrong half the time. You're going to get results like this.
I just think they've got the right mindset at the moment. I read a thing earlier with this where they're basically, the coach was saying, we want to win the World Cup. And it's like quite a bold statement to make. But like, teams could say that all the time, but they just really mean that
I thought you were supposed to say we're building for a World Cup.
Kevin Rouet said, France, don't worry about the results.
We'll take care of it. Right, moving.
But anyway.
USA, England. Julia, not as bad as we worried, maybe?
Bad. That was not bad at all. I'm thrilled with the performance. 60. Yeah, they did. And that was really, in my opinion, that was really the last 20-30 minutes. Holding them to.
Yeah, I'm going to show the points photograph.
Right. The problem was that the last half really got away from them, and not to excuse it and not to say that it means that they're still amazing or anything, but it is that kind of progression is something that you would expect from the USA. And I'm still happy with it. There were a lot of indicators of progress that we know that USA is looking to make. USA is also, even us, we are not at where Canada is. And Huw, actually, you did a great deep dive into how is Canada doing this so well? And a lot of the things that you mentioned are not ones that the USA shares. Yes, we're a big nation. Yes, we have a lot of money. All of that is true. We also have way more sports to compete with. Rugby got here super late. And then there is the same problem that Canada faces, which is it's very hard to get our players together. And when it's hard to train at that level, you have people playing literally all over the globe, different styles. It is hard to maintain 80 minutes of solid gameplay, no matter what your tactics are. And we know that USA has problems finishing, especially later in the game. And it's something they're working on. And you could see hints of that in the beginning. And I think that's I talked with our buddy David Lawrence, since we're doing shout outs. Shout out David. I talked to David about this, actually, about what we would consider a win going into the game, not knowing what we would end up seeing. And we kind of agreed that ideally it would be scoring 2 on the Red Roses and keeping it to under 50 points separation. We did both of those. We did one of the 2 in the first half, which was outstanding. It was not that long ago that we couldn't score on the Red Roses, is really what I want to impart upon the viewing audience.
If you look at the points flow chart,
yeah,
you kind of went 2 scores down in the first quarter and kind of held it there for the vast majority of the game, and then in the last 10 minutes.
The holding it is what I really want. The holding is what I really want people to focus on, because it is something that just a few years ago we couldn't do. That's the big thing, is that these margins used to be much higher. I don't think we are anywhere near as close as touching England as Canada is. I'm not saying that, but I do think now, especially now that we've seen, and I'm thinking of the one match that USA can target to win in this WXV competition, and I think of Ireland, and I look at this performance, and I am less scared. I'm still scared. I still think, in full honesty and transparency, I do think there is a chance that we could be at the bottom again. I think they know that too. We're a very pragmatic team, knowing how behind we are. That said, I personally was thrilled. We did everything that people who watch this team closely. Exactly. It's
some really nice tries.
Is we've got some really great operators. And I think that once we get more time together, once all of our top line players are, and this is another thing we could completely go off the rails about, but if you look at our lineup, actually, while most global fans would probably assume that all of them play in the PWR, they don't. Several of our elite players play in our pro league, which is about to go actually pro in 2025. But we do want to at least try to start forming a bed for grassroots growth, that we don't have to send people away to England or France or Australia to play.
We'll come back to that theme later on.
Exactly.
Julia, I thought that the scoreline really actually flattered England. I don't think
that's how I felt too.
I thought England were good, but I thought they looked a bit rusty
at
times.
Boring. They're so
boring. That's the thing, though, is they are boring, and I feel, and this isn't my bias talking, because I love watching so many different teams. I mean, I'm an American on a Welsh podcast. I absolutely love watching other teams. I do find, and in fact, John Mitchell has talked about it himself, is that when he came in, he didn't like the repetition of England. He didn't like the idea of just bring down a maul, Lark Davis brings over with a driving maul 5 meters out. Nobody likes that, and it becomes easy to defend against.
Wow, England, 2% possession in your own 22 is good, though.
Yeah. So
I was going to say, I do think I can see a huge chink in England's armour. The problem is, I don't think there's anyone who can exploit it yet. And it's something we were talking about during the start. I watched the first half and then had to go to bed because I had to get up early next morning. Their back three are incredibly slow at getting back into position.
Yeah.
When ball gets turned over. But I don't know if that's just because they know no team has the kicking game to fully exploit the backfield in that sort of way.
Well, the Kiwis
really good point.
In the friendly with New Zealand, the New Zealand wingers had an absolute field day out wide. They completely tore England's first choice back three apart, ball in hand. But like I said, New Zealand are the best wingers in the world. So it's like, who else has, like you said, Harley, who else has got the firepower to exploit that?
You can also see a little bit of indecision in England in their own back three, because we know individually they've got several good players, but in the past few competitive matches they've played, they've switched it up a bunch. It may be showing off firepower. Look at how many great players we have. But I wouldn't necessarily say that all of them were hits in terms of combinations. It's great. I mean, obviously, nobody has depth like the Red Roses. But for me, honestly, the chink in the armor was that once you could break some of those lines, there was stuff that, I mean, we just saw it in the Kate Zachary try. There's certainly breaking to be done. It's got to be by a stronger and faster team than USA, but Canada could challenge that, absolutely.
I thought USA, like, they were really, I don't know, they kind of looked more dynamic at times than England. I don't know, maybe I'm probably biased, but they just were hitting really aggressively, and they kind of, I don't know, England looked a bit flat to me. Like they weren't
this is kind of, and I say bittersweet only because like there's some really good parts and some really bad parts to the way that American rugby players have had to kind of develop themselves and how the team has developed despite not having players all in the same country. You know, it's bad that you can't get consistency. It's bad that there are some cohesion issues. Absolutely. However, we have a lot of really skilled individuals who like playing together, if nothing else, even if they don't get to do it that often. They like playing together. The team has a good ethos. They have a coach that they finally believe in. And because of that, we've gotten to see some people who have been playing in multiple places, playing in Australia, playing in France, playing in England, that pull out tricks that they have learned that you may not have expected, because we don't see it in the training camp that much, because we don't get to train that much. But there's a lot of unpredictability because they don't know many of our players. And, you know, obviously I would like to get to the point where everybody can analyze all of our players the same way you can about all the Red Roses. But in the meantime, I think that they are learning how to exploit the unpredictability. And a team like England hates unpredictability. I'd say most of the Six Nations teams actually hate unpredictability.
We're very structured.
I think
it's well, northern hemisphere rugby has always been very formulaic. Everybody has different formulas, but everybody sticks to their formulas. The USA hasn't ever found that groove, which is the bitter part. But the sweet part is that, like, when you aren't constrained by old traditions or old methods of playing, you can make stuff up. And they did. And I do think that some of those tries were truly just like, I'm gonna try and see if it works. It didn't work sometimes. A few times it shocked them. A few times it shocks them. You have to be brave. You have to be like a Lev Kelter level of knowing, like, when I get the ball, I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna try. But the USA has a few of those people.
England also kicked 8 out of 9 conversions, which is very impressive, even for men's rugby. Like, Callum Sheedy could only dream.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Scotland versus Italy, then. So, Harley, shut up.
No, same kicking percentage is.
If he's going to say something nice about America, if you're going to say something nice about America, you get to interrupt. What was it?
No, he's not.
What was the score again, Huw? What was the score again, Huw? On Saturday?
I turned it off after 10 minutes. I assumed we finished 50 points in the lead. Right. The Scotland versus Italy, very quickly. Scotland would be a bit disappointed not to notch up the bonus point, but I would say Scotland's generally, you know, it was peeing down with rain.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive rugby team at the moment. I still think they are, I still think on balance they are better than some of the teams in WXV1.
Yes. I think they would say that too.
Yeah.
But they said they wanted to be in WXV2, so I'm happy for them, I guess.
I am, because I think even more now than the last time we spoke, I think they're going to take it for sure, especially after what we just saw.
Yeah, what do you think?
Scotland does very well in second division competitions. That's
this
definitely
thing,
not.
Right?
Oh, the Scots are going to love hearing it.
Of all the things,
so
that
we
I said
said we
about
were going to get
Scottish
cancelled. Nobody expected Harley to get us cancelled of anybody on the pod.
You can say whatever you want about Scottish rugby, and God knows I have. But I have actually become, again, something I thought I'd never say. I've become quite attached to this Scottish team. They've got some players who I'm like, you ain't.
It's so hard to hate them.
Like,
you can't dislike them. You can't dislike that team.
Dr. Rachel Malcolm. You can't.
Dr. Rachel Malcolm. Oh, what a legend.
You can't like who doesn't like Jade Conkle? Who doesn't like Sarah Bonner? Like, fine.
They're so likable, and they play rugby.
I'm buying a jersey.
But they play rugby
They
with like a
women's fit.
smile on their faces,
I know.
and they're. If you ever look at their socials, they just look like they're just
happy.
having an absolute best time of their life, living their best life. #.
They do Kaylee's as warm-ups. Like
their social media is a joy. And I don't like I've got no.
It's a nice place to be.
I love it. Really now. Is. Though. I'm just like, well, how come Scotland are my second team? Yeah.
Yes. I really enjoyed so much over the Six Nations that when I found out, because I was asking my mom if I could come pick something up at her house, and she was like, "We're actually in the Outer Hebrides right now." I was like, "Cool, could you grab me a jersey from the shop when you go through Edinburgh?" And they said yes. And they make you feel nice.
But I do think, I think they have
wheels make us feel nice.
Well, I think part of that, I mean, it's not just because of this, but I do think part of their success at the moment is part of this. They're kind of, when you're a happy team, you're more likely to have more success.
You and I have talked at length about this, but and it may be a difference between men's and women's rugby. I don't know, but I feel like leadership has a lot to do with it. And everybody really enjoys working under Rachel Malcolm.
The Scotland players love Captain Dr. Rachel Malcolm so much that they cry when they talk about her.
They cry when they talk about her. There are pictures online of her coming and playing cards with them in the hospital. She looks like she's like a saint. She's a saint. It's so annoying. You know what? You know what it makes me think of, actually, Huw? I think about this a lot. I think about one of the first times you and I ever talked. And I think of her like Sia. Like, can you do something bad? Like, can you drive a bus full of orphans off the road? Do something, because it seems
she kicked a puppy once,
right? It has to be something like that. No, and then we're gonna find out that, like, on her off time, she goes and like gives puppies free surgery.
Yeah, she heals sick puppies.
Exactly.
Okay, right. Well, we're gonna knock down the Florence Nightingale statues and put up a Captain Dr. Rachel Malcolm one instead.
Listen.
Yeah.
No. Steady.
We do a lot of Dr. Rachel Malcolm love on the spot. Can we talk about the other team? All right, admittedly on the scoreboard they did nothing, but can we talk a little bit about Italy and where we think they are? Because for a start, they're going to be our opponents on Friday.
Exactly.
At the very least. I thought it's very, again, going straight to, and I apologize, I know it's a women's rugby podcast and I always divert back to men, but that's where the majority of my knowledge is. It does remind me of like the old Italian men's team, where they do lots of very nice fancy things, but nothing gets done, if that makes sense.
I feel that way a lot about, they all are. I feel that way a lot about Rigoni. Yeah, is that I feel like there's a lot of flair, and there is a lot of individual strength. It is, like we've talked about before, the cohesion isn't there. And I do wonder if that has to do with, actually, we haven't heard that much about contract progression with Italy. They went semi-pro and then got really quiet. So I wonder what it's like. And I wish that there was more English language media. I mean, obviously, please keep doing it in Italian. That's what you should do. I should do more research myself, but they seem stalled. And we've talked about, well, we didn't touch on it, but France seems stalled in a way. Italy seems stalled. I don't understand.
I think they definitely stagnated. They were a bit like Wales in the sense that they kind of were getting better, and then they do have some good players. Like they've got some, talented backs that create a lot. They've speedy,
absolutely.
That kind of. We saw it when Wales played Italy in Cardiff. That their backs did create quite a lot against us and exposed us quite a few times. But yeah, and we only just beat them, if I remember correctly. I think it was like a last-minute try, wasn't it?
Hold on to that memory.
Yeah, I know. And, they kind of were a bit up and down, but they did nearly beat us. But I don't know, there's something not quite right with Italy, isn't it? I think it's a bit like Wales. I don't know if it's, similar kind of ththings that's going on.
We'll find out exactly how similar very soon.
Development, I think.
Yeah.
I do wonder with the Italian rugby, because obviously the FIR own going back to the pro size, and they've told Zebra they have to cut their costs, and I wonder if they're going to if they're bearing the brunt of that as well, and somewhere behind the scenes we just haven't heard.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was stuff like that, to be honest.
And they also have the same problem that teams like Canada and USA have. Many of their players are not playing at Italy. They're playing in France or England.
Yeah.
Okay, next game that we need to talk about. Well, two more that I want to touch on. Who wanted to talk about Netherlands versus Samoa?
Harley.
Yeah. So on the face of it, I thought this game was basically just going to be Samoa. I mean, I don't know if we want to get into what's happened since with the Samoa women's team. Or if we
is it the women's coach though? I thought he was the men's coach.
It's the men's team, I think.
Either
Thank
way,
God.
that's
either way, it's not nice.
Yeah, I think
either way, it's
how
not
much
great.
worse it'd be if it was the women's coach.
And we are not a rugby news podcast, thank God.
But yeah, I thought it was basically a walk, and seeing Netherlands results in Rugby Europe Championship,
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting much from, and to see that it was an 8-8 draw was fascinating. I was like, I've got to watch this game.
Yeah,
and it's one of those games which I couldn't take my eyes off of, even
though
it was
really
a very
thrilling.
low-scoring game, and Samoa's try didn't come until the death. It was just enthralling because we talk about how much we always enjoy Clash of Styles. The free-flowing play that the Netherlands did, especially for that very quick early try, and then how well they held out Samoa, who just, I'll be honest, Samoa women play as Samoa men do, really, to most extent.
Yeah.
But sorry, I had to cough there. But and it was just absolutely fascinating to watch. And I mean, I'm one of those people who tends to be more towards the lower scoring games than the higher scoring games anyway, because I find tactical battles far more exhilarating than
Definitely.
Oh well, we scored 12 tries, they scored 11. I'll be honest, it's like, boring.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I hated Leinster. They scored too many points.
I mean, they do get boring. We've complained many times. I mean, especially in women's, we've had eras, and also just anybody who plays England in general. We've definitely had like games that are so boring. Yeah, there was a 70-point margin, but God, it was awful to watch. That was not one of them.
I heard Alice Sofa talking about Samoa and how now that pathway is opening up a little bit more, and some of the women that she coaches in New Zealand now have Samoa as an option. And I just think that's very interesting. And I thought Netherlands would win this a lot easier, and they didn't. But that's a nice surprise. Sometimes it's fun to be wrong. Last game that I want to talk about is South Africa versus Japan. We hyped this one up. We said this is a fascinating game, and it
really
exceeded expectations.
It really was. Yeah, if folks listening, if you haven't watched it, it's a really fun game of rugby. You will really enjoy watching.
Oh yeah,
yeah. What? I swear, at one point, Japan scored a rolling maul against South Africa.
Yes.
I was like,
yeah, they did.
What is happening?
I think one of the first ones I've ever seen out of Japan.
Yeah,
it was.
I think it's great.
It was wonderful.
I'm here for this.
I was going to say the progress that they have made with their physical strength is, I will just say it right now, the rugby world didn't expect it. There has been a lot of talk still about like they're probably improving their speed game, and surprise, they did. But they really improved their physicality, and especially when you were playing against even the women box. I was afraid. I'll be honest.
Well, we were watching it at the same time, weren't we? And we were chatting.
We all watched it live.
And it, like, literally for the first half hour or the first half, I think every other message, you'd be like, I can't believe how physical Japan are. And then we'd be like, message, can't believe how like, it's kind of, we were just kept repeating that because we just could not believe it. And they, it's not like they fell apart after 10 minutes. They withstood it. I'm here for it.
They withstood it well into the second half. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought Japan played really well.
I've been thinking a lot about that, especially because there was already, in my opinion, too much hubris coming out of some Wales rugby fans talking about how, at least Japan would be easy. No.
I don't think they will be at all.
I don't think they will.
I think we might struggle against them.
They're very organized, and they talk.
They're quick.
They talk on the field. They're really communicative to each other.
What?
Which we don't. Which Wales doesn't.
What is this?
What are they saying?
That's for earlier.
God,
and you know what? That is our bad.
Tonight, then
I was going to say, so Huw comes out of the gate. We don't understand Japanese. Good call, Huw. You're right. I don't. I'm going to work on it.
Okay. That was a fun game, like you said.
It was fun.
I don't know if you can find it on the WXV's feed, but it was one of the South African rolling balls, and I just thought there's just this most beautiful image of the lock. Find the name here. I've got it on here. I'm going to completely butcher this. Vanna Ubusi. If that's not pronunciation, I apologize to you. But there's one. She's got these fantastic long braided hair. It's a bit reminds me of Pete Josh and Vivi. And this bit where she
was the one with the fantastic braid. Yes.
Yeah, and she's urging South Africa maul on, and it just whips out to almost this full arc of hair, and it's one of the most beautiful, majestic clips I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I know.
Even though it's
so
the women
good to watch.
And of course, the two teams will be different. I mean, it's still South Africa. Like, you're going to see some really pretty stuff very soon, probably out of them with the way they're progressing.
I was impressed by they scored one try from quite far out. It was a really, really good try. I love multi-phase tries because everyone can score a transition try. Everyone can score a first phase line out fancy move. It's when you're going forward from a long way out.
Scarlets.
All right, okay. It's when
it was coming.
It's when you're going forward and then you get knocked back and then you keep going forward again. In men's international rugby, it's pretty much only Ireland and South Africa who can do it. But South African women did it a couple of times in this game, and it was really, really impressive. What was the name of their fly half again? It's like the best name ever. Is it something Ruas? Something like that?
Oh yeah, what's her name?
Nadine Ruas.
Nadine Ruas.
That's it.
Top tier rugby name. Fantastic. She's going to be a star.
Fantastic.
I will say, one of the things that made this game so entertaining was there was some quite crap rugby played in it as well. Like some of the defense was, I was like, hey, tackle her. But
yeah,
that's what made it.
And it'll come from two teams that are coming from behind. It'll happen. Yeah,
absolutely.
South Africa have really, I know you've mentioned it before, but South Africa have really improved loads though. They played Wales a couple of years ago at the Arms Park in a friendly, and they were really bad. But they've they've improved loads.
We've up for the last World Cup or something. If I remember rightly.
I'm just trying to think. They played Japan.
It was probably for.
They played Japan and.
It was probably for 2021. Played in 22.
I think it was warm up.
They had the Commonwealth Sevens in Coventry, which is near where I live, and I went to see them. And South Africa women came out. Oh, maybe they weren't there. Maybe it wasn't the Commonwealth Games, but. I watched South African women sevens play, and I remember thinking, they're bad. This team sucks. And to see them,
yes,
like
that's true.
Yeah, it's great.
They're not amazing on the sevens circuit yet. I think that's probably coming as well. No, what I've been really happy with, and Huw, actually, we've talked about it just because I don't have the background on South Africa like I should, because I'm only a women's fan, and in my world they're kind of coming up. But they've thrown a bunch of money at this, which you pointed out, and they've hired a bunch of big names to coach and consult. I know I've mentioned it before, but Lynn Cantwell is the high performance, and I mean, like, she knows how to take a failing Ireland and make it into a Grand Slam winning Ireland. So if you have like the bones of a South African women's team, I get the feeling that it is going to become a scary monster.
We better watch out.
Right.
Certainly Wales does, because I think that the lower tier Northern Hemisphere teams are their first targets, as it should be.
Yeah. Okay. The time has almost come, but before then, just remind everybody, if you've gotten this far into the podcast, you're clearly enjoying it. So please consider liking and subscribing. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We will reply. And if you're listening on audio, leave us a 5-star review. You can leave a comment when you do that as well. And we shall also read it out on the pod or reply to it. So get involved, and we appreciate everybody's support. Right, come on then. Wales against Australia. So Johan Cunningham said a couple of weeks ago, I would rather lose at home and then win in WXV2. The opposite of that happened, and the opposite of that really happened. So 62-5. I mean, we're a standalone pod now, but we've had a lot of chats about Wales women rugby team. Is there anything new to say here? Or was this just every problem we've ever had coming up again?
I don't feel like there's a lot new. That was really what it felt like, to be honest, is that it felt like we'd been given a lot of lip service before from coaching and management. And I feel vindicated by thinking that, by what he said. I passed around the tweet to you guys right before we started recording, by what he said after. It's not inspiring. It sounds like it's lip service to some fans that they're going to turn around and beg not to leave again. Maybe they'll make Kira come out and apologize. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta say, losing wasn't a surprise to me.
The
I remember
was.
the manner of it was. I mean, I think we kind of were doing okay for about 50 minutes. I was kind of I was worried at 50 minutes. I was worried. I wasn't confident we were going to win, but I didn't at all envision that we would lose by as many as we did. We just kind of fell apart after 50 minutes, and we were kind of, I don't know, we were defending quite aggressively, which sort of was an improvement, I thought. And
which was positive.
Which was a positive, and we seemed to be actually running a few lines a bit more. We seemed to be finding a little bit more space for Wales. I'm not saying that we were like New Zealand or England or Canada, but that did seem a bit more positive. But we're still not, great in that area. But there were positives for that. And then after 50 minutes, it just kind of fell apart. And it does feel like the same old kind of stuff again. And you're kind of a bit sort of, well, I don't really know I don't feel like if we don't change something, it's just like repeating the same mistakes all the time.
And that's the
so we're always going to
part.
end up happening.
Exactly. And it seems like after every catastrophic loss, and by the way, there haven't only been a few of them, it's been many that we've gotten on this to talk about, and we haven't even been doing this that long. It feels like two things. One, they're not learning, or they're being stubborn. And this is above the players. Maybe it's at the captain level. I think it's above. I think it's coaches and trainers. And I've seen some conversations out there on socials that should it be on the shoulders of the players or on management and staff and coaching. All I ask those people is, how much consistency can you expect when things change literally from match to match? We talked about what would look like success for Wales, and it would be winning 2 matches in a row. And again, we can't put that together. We're not finding combinations that work. We're not finding plans that work. I don't know whose fault it is, but there isn't preparation the way there should be. And we used to be a team that for a while we were a second half team that, like, if Wales is going to come back, it'll be in the second half. Now we can't bring it to the second half. How? How did that happen with progression? And anytime you ask those questions, you get Ewan coming out and saying, don't worry about the results. We're building.
I feel our tactics. I don't know what our tactics are half the time. We do.
It's get it to Cecilia.
It's get it to Cecilia.
That's not a tactic.
But it's definitely not get it to Jazz Joyce. It was quite interesting, really, to hear, because the co-coms was a South African commentator, and it was interesting to hear someone else's view on it. And she was like, she basically said, I've come here to watch Jazz Joyce, and she hasn't touched the ball. And, we were joking about it, like in the chat, like, can we pass right? She's on the right wing. Is that why we can't get it to her? Because we can't pass right?
But jokes aside, she's right, though. And, like, that is the one thing. And I understand that maybe, I understand maybe the tactic might not be doing that because they would assume that the opponent would think that that's the one thing we're going to do. So we're not going to do it.
She's heavily marked.
Unfortunately, it's the only thing that works, though.
She is heavily marked.
She knows how to take a mark, unlike half of our back line.
But I mean, there are, you use her as a decoy if she's heavily. Like, there are ways.
We have other people who can run.
Things. You have, there's. I think this is the issue I have. We just don't seem to have any kind of tactics outside of the bash bish bash bosh, and I get frustrated with that.
And it feels like a misuse of the talent that we know that we do have, because there are talented people in the pool of backs. Half of them, we apparently can't decide what number they wear, which I feel like is probably bad for consistency. And some players who are really reliable, like Karis Cox, find a place for her. Just put her in.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's in the centers. I'm sorry, it's going to make people mad. It's in the centers. There's a center that keeps getting a shirt that shouldn't be getting it. Give her the shirt. Sorry. I feel like defending doesn't have to be so hard.
Harley, you said that you had some views. Please share.
So one thing. So one thing that's been building over the last couple of games is that centre partnership. And Johan Cunningham has gone, this centre partnership's working well. Our backline defence is looking the best it has since this time last year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split that up.
Yeah.
To try and accommodate for a deficiency in defence elsewhere. Fucking stupid. Like, I'm not. Look, admittedly, he's been through elite sport far more than I have, but I can see that just seems counterintuitive. Don't break the thing that works to fix the thing that does work. Like, one thing, I thought there were some very good performances in our Australia game. Thought Georgia Evans again just showed what's good. Alcal, probably not her best game for Wales, but still showed what we've been missing in the previous 2 matches. One thing I do want to bring up with Georgia Evans is she put in loads of cheap shots, and I loved it. I fucking love her for that sort of shit. The amount of times she just bossed
we
the
love a
10
shithouser. We have Georgia Evans. We have exactly. We have Georgia Evans. We have Alcal. We have KB. Let them, because it's the only thing that works.
I actually felt sorry for those players that you mentioned a bit, because I feel like sometimes players like Georgia Evans always gives like 1,000%, and I think she might have been one of the players that came out before and said, "Oh, we don't, we've been criticising them," and no one doesn't think that they're not trying. Like they're giving 100%. Like I know, that's never the case. It's just that I don't know. I think that they're being let down by the setup, and
the reason that
I think they're preparing poorly.
The reason that I harp so much on the coaching and the management is because I genuinely do not think it is primarily on the players. I think that the player pool that we have right now is definitely the best that Wales has right now. I don't think that they're
the management's
badly.
The management's not getting the best out of them. I mean, that's
exactly,
and that's the key for me. And this has been going on for quite a while now, and I don't. Unless something changes, it's just going to be the same thing over and over. We don't really have anyone else to bring in. This is the talent that we've got.
No, and I mean, if we brought in more right now, I feel like it would cause even more havoc. I feel like it would make it even more disjointed. I know that there's certainly we hope that there's a pathway building somewhere. But certainly we know, I mean, we've seen performances in their own Six Nations, in the under-20s Six Nations and everything. What we have right now is definitely the best that Wales has to offer. There has to be a better equation of using them. And I hate to point to something, it feels kind of like trite to say, but Gloucester Hartpury has no problem using these Welsh people properly. Someone isn't doing it right. Because half of the team plays there, and they are the national champions.
So I feel like we're getting towards the next topic, which, like I said, there's not much to say about this game that we haven't already said in other podcasts. But, the next topic that we needed to talk about is the contracts have been announced in terms of who's fully contracted. I've got the list up on the screen. I'm not going to read the whole list because there's 37 of them. I have an angle on this, and this could be a whole podcast into itself. And we don't necessarily have time, but I have a fundamental problem with hiring people full time to play for the national side. I don't think that's how it should work, and that's not how it works in other places. Now, I understand that women's rugby is in a place where international is everything, but I feel like there's been talk. The WRU have tried to put out some noises about how much money this is costing. If we guess that this cost of this is $750,000, if you split that money in two, you could have Bristol Thunder and Gwalior Lightning be the 2 best funded women's club sides in the world, and you could be creating 2 institutions that could generate talent for the Welsh national team in perpetuity if you get it right. We had something very similar to this with Wales men, where we had the Elite 38, where their contracts were subsidised heavily by the WRU, and what we ended up with was a 33-year-old plus squad of men who were all on money that was only going up, and they all left at the same time. And we are now left in the position where Wales's men's first choice tight head is some kid from Bath who is third choice for an English Premiership side. And all this is done because it's only a 2-year contract. We're just going to have exactly the same headache in 2 years' time. And I understand that there's pressure and social media pressure and things. Everyone in women's rugby is handing out contracts. So Welsh, I can understand why it's like, no, we can't be seen not to be doing this. But I feel like it would take a big act of leadership, but to say, we're going to spend the money on creating the pathways to make sure that Wales's women's rugby pathway to international level is the best in the world. Whereas instead, we're paying money to these players, and I'm not having a go at the players at all. We're paying money to these players where 50% of their value that they add as rugby players is in England.
Yep.
We're not getting our money's worth out of these players.
And
I don't understand. Sorry, my very last thing. We should say to these players, we're funding Brython and Gwalia to be our pathways, our hubs. If you want a slice of that money, absolutely, we would love to pay it to you. Come and play for Brython or Gwalia, because that's what WRU said in their strategy of, we want to bring the women's players back to Wales. Here was an opportunity to do it, whereas instead we're paying players to play for English clubs.
So it is very interesting you say that, because there is one team that is doing exactly that. Canada will likely do the same, or they will in some way buy into the WER. But it's interesting that you brought up about that social pressure. And I agree, there absolutely is, especially for European teams, and to a lesser extent, the Southern Hemisphere, of course. But notably, neither the US or Canada has centralized contracts. And instead, we got that insane infusion of money from Michelle Kang, the $4 million because she doesn't understand rugby. She was like, for women's rugby in America, and assumed that it would go to sevens. And we were like, well, actually, the sevens has a lot of money. We're actually going to give it to the 15s. You don't have to worry about that. You don't care about rugby. And she's like, I do not. Here's the money. Wonderful.
Why can't we have someone like that?
Right? You just need to get a clueless billionaire. Michelle, if you're listening, you're not clueless, babe.
You don't have many in Wales.
You got to get more clueless billionaires in Wales. Don't. It'll make Wales worse. But what we said instead, because it is our number one problem, and I mentioned it earlier, our number one problem is that there is absolutely no way to get American women to stay in America right now and compete at an elite level. So instead, we said, all right, that's it. We're professionalizing our domestic competition. Because we need them to come back, because we need it to not be a one-day travel day just to get anybody to the place. And I mean, for Australia, it's literally 2 days. So we don't have the same privilege as Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, that it's so easy to get to and from England. So instead, they said, we're going to dump our money into this new professional league. We're going to see how it goes, but definitely, if you want to make money playing rugby, you can now do it in America. Please come do it. When you do it, it will probably be much easier for selectors to see you, because again, it's also a pain in the ass to go out to Australia, to go out to Europe, to go out to, well, that's the only places they're playing right now. But we have yet to see if it works. I think it could be a complete failure, but that is one thing that I give the American sport culture in general, is that they are much more willing than anywhere else that I follow sports to throw money at something and say, let's see. If the money doesn't work, okay. And we're not saying that there will be an endless flow of money either. It could be a total loss. But you have to take the risks. And certainly it has seemed like Wales has been on the precipice of understanding that, like, this might be something that you need to take a risk for. I like the idea of Gwalia and Brython getting the money. My question would be, where would they compete? Because you can't create more Celtic Challenge out of nothing.
Well, this is what I was going to ask. Is the issue, are players not necessarily, I mean, yeah, players want to be paid to play rugby and compete professionally, but there's a level of rugby that they're going to play it in England or whatever that's a lot higher. So in Wales, if you're a player and you're thinking, well, I could get paid to stay in Wales, but what's the standard going to be like? Is that, yes. I don't know. I mean, I assume that is going to be an issue, but like, well, how much of it?
The Wales women have mentioned exactly that. Fionn Lewis has talked about it at length. Fionn Lewis is when I think about it, she's one of the people who comes top of mind for people who have been out there saying, like, if you bring competitive elite rugby back to Wales, it is the first place I will go. I mean, I truly believe, I mean, she's recovering also, but I feel like she would wait. And I think there are other players that would. Alex Callender has said that when she was captaining.
I think probably.
right? Yeah.
I think it's probably quite a few of the players want to play professional rugby in Wales. They want to play at home.
So does Flaky.
I think
Flaky said
it's just
same thing.
It's getting that level of it's getting the standard right, and that's not going to happen. That can't happen overnight.
But it's
also
having
not to be brave.
Yeah, it's also not going to happen if you don't spend the money. And clearly, there's a pot of money there, and they've made a decision on what to spend it on. And to those players who want to stay, who you give them the choice and say, "We'll give you a contract where you come and play in Wales, or you can stay where you are." And if they go, "I'll stay where I am," fine, no problem. That's what you want to do.
That's exactly, cool. And that's exactly what America is about to do. Coming back, it will be a trade-off. A lot of the people who play at the elite level will have to decide, and some people have made lives over there and met partners over there. That sucks. You do eventually.
I'm not saying don't pick them for Wales if they play
right.
Abroad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't give them an essential contract.
Not even going there with it.
I hate that, to be honest.
None of the nations. None of the nations that we're talking about, including Ireland, who is doing it really strongly, none of the nations are really at the strength level where you can make those kinds of ultimatums. Ireland has, and it was massively unpopular.
Yeah.
Imagine those two Welsh.
Sorry. Because one of the things I was talking about, we're talking about like the WRU developing Brython Thunder Gully Lightning. WRU didn't even invent them. This came from a pot of money that World Rugby spent on it. Like the Celtic Challenge is a WRU project.
It was free.
To try and push. They didn't want to put any money into it.
No.
I mean, and if you look at that, so basically nothing's happening with that because World Rugby haven't decided what they sort of got fixtures, they haven't really announced what all things. So WRU is sitting on their ass with that. In the meantime, Ireland have had the Women's Air All Ireland League, and they have their interprovincial championship. So those players who are not quite their top level players have already got competition coming up from below because the IRFU, by giving a third of a shit, have got something in place that's look, I'm not saying we can copy Ireland exactly, same with the men's game. You can't always copy another team exactly, but the fact is they're trying. The SOU are actually doing quite good things with rugby. Talking to Queen Manson, their women's game is actually quite strong, and
their domestic championship is
Glasgow
great.
And Edinburgh. They know where that step is. In Wales, there doesn't seem to be an obvious step to get from top of the community game, or if you're in the under 18 teams of the 4 regions, how you get to Brython to that, unless you go to England.
Well,
and you sort that, they don't even have to make it a paid team. But until they say, all right, we're going to have this as a feeder team, this is a feeder team, and this is how you progress, or they have something, or they're just trying to think, even if they talk to, I don't know, because there is a division under PWR of women's teams, because I think Bath's it, and a few others.
There is a championship, yes.
There's sort of championship, semi-pro, just saying, can we just play the odd fixture against you guys? If you've got a rest week, can we just play a long season?
The women's calendar
Wasps and Worcester play.
It's not busy. Arrange friendlies.
There are constant bye weeks, by the way. Also,
so this, there's something to get an interest. Personally, I know Lance Bradley and actually Dickie Holland, when I interviewed them on Central, they said how they'd love to have a women's team. Is it the WRU that's stopping them, or is it just because finances are too tight? Just say, can you see if you can arrange? Or even if you just say, right, one day at CAP or Park of Scarlets, or, when they eventually build the St. Helens We Are Awesome Dome, just say, look at the top women's teams in that area and say, we're going to have a rugby festival. I mean, it's really easy at CAP because it's a synthetic pitch. You don't have to worry about it. Pick it, even if you do it on a Sunday when there's no other games on, there's something there. And then maybe you say, right, arrange a fixture. And then you just sort of say, we'll have a sort of fixture where the best of those win. We'll see if we can play some of the Bath women team or someone in the West Country, or just because I do think maybe the pro sides, when they're saying that they'd love a women's team, maybe do something, just turn around and say we're going to do it anyway. Fuck the WRU.
Sean, what was it that happened with Cardiff Quins and that whole whatever competition they were in? Because you've taught me this long ago, that there was something like this at one point for women in Wales, and then it collapsed. I don't know why.
Oh, there were a lot more clubs. You had quite a lot of clubs, and Cardiff Quins played in the English league, the English the first division. That was like the top league then. I mean, this is going back in then like 1995, around about that time, 96. And they had to be fair, Cardiff Quins became the team to play for if you wanted to play for Wales. It was like pretty much all Cardiff Quins players. But yeah, they did used to beat quite a lot of the top English sides at the time, and then the English rugby union checked them out. I think it was because they were winning.
Ooh, I could go on from a tangent here, but I'm not going to. Look, guys, it's been a fantastic podcast. We are butting right up against the limit of our time. We could go on. There's topics that we wanted to cover this week that we haven't had time to, so we'll have to do another one next week and cover them then. Let me just get score predictions for Wales versus Italy from each person. Sian, you're first.
I think Wales are going to lose. And I think it's going to be something like 25-20 or something like that.
Harley?
All right, Italy by about 8.
Julia?
1917 to Italy.
Wales by 10. You're all frauds. Right. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you all next time.
I'm always very pessimistic.